Well, hello again, my friends, and welcome back to Carpo 719, the greatest YouTube channel running for over 47 years. And you can look that up, it's true. You can look it up on Wikipedia's predecessor, the Encyclopedia. What was that sound? Sounds like a raccoon and a helicopter at the same time. Before I came out to make this, I made sure to remind myself that I'm going to be interrupted by noise because I live near the city and therefore noise is predominant. In fact, I figured it would be either A, the dogs barking, or B, sirens, but I forget helicopters as well are an issue. Now I'm glad that helicopter came by because it really puts a kind of a perspective on what I'm going to talk about here, which is nature and our connection to nature. Now, before you're like, oh no, more tree hugger shit, I have a point here. The question is, can nature make us happier? Can being out in nature make us happier? The answer, to me, is an obvious, resounding yes. There's no way that I can deny that being out in the woods makes me a happier person. But I figured I might as well look up a couple studies, and I should do that first before I ramble on about this. It was kind of interesting. It's just this little web page from Berkeley, some research they had done. There are several other connections, but I just wanted to read this part. These studies were done where people were looking at beautiful plants. It says, the results showed that the presence of more beautiful plants significantly increased the number of cranes made by participants, and this increase was mediated by positive emotion elicited by natural beauty. The researchers concluded that experiencing the beauty of nature increases positive emotion, perhaps by inspiring awe, a feeling akin to wonder with the sense of being part of something bigger than one's self, which then leads to pro-social behaviors. And when I say pro-social, when they say pro-social, what they mean is wanting to be part of something, wanting to be part of society. So many people are so withdrawn, and when you're looking at concrete jungles, it's very hard to really want to be part of a bigger connection of nature. And I believe that our ancestors had no choice. They were forced to. They had to reckon with nature. When it wasn't you against your neighbor, but you against nature, and rather to protect yourself against hurricanes and hot and cold, we tended to come together on that. But so to continue, it says, support for this theory comes from an experiment conducted by Paul Piff from the University of California, Irvine, and colleagues, in which participants staring up a grove of very tall trees for as little as 1 minute experienced measurable increases in awe and demonstrated more helpful behavior and approached moral dilemmas more ethically than participants who spent the same amount of time looking up at a high building. Now these things sound pretty obvious, but this next one I'm just going to read briefly. It's nature makes you feel more alive. With all the benefits to being out in nature, it's probably no surprise that something about nature makes us feel more alive and vital. Being outdoors gives us energy, makes us happier, helps us to relieve the everyday stresses of our overscheduled lives, opens the door to creativity, and helps us be kind to others. No one knows if there's an ideal amount of nature exposure, and then it goes on to talk about how nature can keep us psychologically healthy. And, you know, I think that as hippy-dippy as it might sound, or the tree hugger mentality some people seem to think it is, I think I would be hard-pressed to find very many people out there who disagree that being out in a natural setting can actually relax you and relax your mind. Now, given there will be a few people who are so stuck in, you know, societal realities in their city that they actually might have fear out in the woods or in a place where they feel unsafe, that's the exception to the rule. In fact, there's a place for everyone, even a local park. There's people who don't feel safe even in their local parks. You know, and there is a lot of danger. The funny thing is, I guess not so funny, is that the danger seldom comes from wildlife or nature itself. We're afraid of eating the wrong mushrooms or the wrong berries or getting attacked by a bobcat, a wildcat Bobcats don't attack, by the way. I should say a cougar. And rarely these things happen. It's the same mentality as not wanting to go swimming because you're afraid of getting attacked by sharks. It's rare, but it happens. But we're much more likely to be killed by our own stupidity or someone around us or somebody with, bad intentions than through some natural means these days, because we're so protected. We are so sheltered. And I think pushing yourself out of the comfort zone is great, but you don't have to do that just to go enjoy nature. Sitting and watching a sunset over a lake. I have this kind of rule, just try not to miss a sunset if you don't have to. If I see something where I have the chance to get up and see a sunset or a sunrise, I take it. And coincidentally enough, yesterday morning, I think it was, either yesterday or the day before, I woke up, and it was really early, 5:30, 6-ish. I'd fallen asleep in the garage because my son had taken over my bed. He's 8, and he still likes to steal my spot and sleep like a crazy man, spread out. So I slept on the couch in the garage, and I woke up, and I looked up, and I saw a very small line along the window, the wood. It was a sun ray, but it only shines in that window in the very earliest part, right at sunrise. And I knew it was red as red, and I said, that's a beautiful sunrise. I should really get up and take a picture or just look at it. And I laid there for a minute and said, nah, it's all right. Went back to bed. Later that morning, like 3 hours later, when my wife and I were sitting there, doing our morning thing, and she goes, oh, look, somebody on the Nextdoor app, I guess it was, took these pictures of the sunrise this morning in Vancouver. And the pictures were so astoundingly beautiful. The clouds were beautifully, perfectly placed in the sky. It was like these little poof balls, and just one of those sunrises that you don't see very often. And I kind of laughed, and I was like, yeah, that's the one that I woke up and I said I should get on my roof and take pictures, but decided not to. My point here being obvious: don't miss an opportunity. Memories make life, and making memories when you are awe-inspired with nature is something I think we should all aspire to more often. But my message here, and the reason why I'm sharing this, and I think it's important, is very simple. Because I think that the more people that connect with nature, the more people will realize that they are a small part of a whole, and that it's okay to both be an individual and part of a system, a natural system that we can all improve upon and live within. When you get together with a small group of trusted people, everyone can let their guard down and laugh, realize we're just human, be silly, be ridiculous, and not worry about being embarrassed. So why are we embarrassed in front of other people for the same things? Because we all know we're goofballs deep down inside. The few who aren't, let's say maybe the Ben Shapiros of the world, the stick up your ass kind of dead serious people who are kind of these Protestant mentality. I guess he's Jewish. That's a different story altogether. But the mentality that everything is bad. I feel like these are the people who haven't ever been out like hiking or actually built anything or done anything with natural substances. In fact, as another point, it's not just going out in nature that matters. It's experiencing nature. I've got this bucket here. I picked this up from the river when we were down there, and this is some of the most beautiful clay I've seen. I guess you can't really see it because it's dark in there, but from the riverbank up by the Olympics on the Hoh River, we got this beautiful clay, and I just grabbed a few pieces off the bank and brought it back, cleaned it up. My son wants to do pottery, and I'm trying to, if I could afford to get a nice wheel, I'd love to, but I'm probably just going to make my own for now. I always inspire my kids when they want to work with natural substances. Clay it's interesting. Pottery is one of the few. I haven't done it in a long time since school, but I also work with stone. I cut cabochons, and I cut, basically have a rock polisher and stone cutter where I can get agates, cut them into pieces, make beautiful jewelry if I want, because I love working with that. I also, one of the only natural things I haven't worked with is metal very much. I've pounded it out, but I don't have a kiln or anything yet. But behind me I've got all my tools here. As a carpenter, I've got my chop saw over here, and then I've got my table saw I just set up over there after years of having it locked up in my garage, just not able to really find a spot to do it. I'm finally trying to inspire myself to bust out, and I mentioned before I'm going to build some guitar cabinets and whatnot. But my point is, when you grab a piece of wood to cut on the saw, you look at the wood, you look at the grain, and you realize this was a living entity. It has a natural features that are as individual as a fingerprint, even more so. No two boards are the same. No two boards will warp or look the same ever. They're all unique, and so you learn to work with that material. Just like people who work with metals work with certain alloys, or glass blowers learn how to work with the consistency and viscosity of glass. And may seem off topic here, but I think working with natural substances is just a great way to really kind of level up on the natural thing. You know, going out in nature is one thing, but actually getting and collecting natural items and, let's say, building even a small rock stack or some sticks and making something, it can just be so... A sandcastle is the perfect example. You know it's going to be washed away. It's like a mandala. If you're not familiar, in Buddhist culture, in some Buddhist sects, they have these giant mandalas they make out of sand. And if you haven't seen them before, they're absolutely beautiful. They tap these, little items, straws, leaves, different things to make these sand patterns that end up being these like 8-foot wide mandalas, and as soon as they're done with it, they just sweep it up. And it's kind of that representation that all is temporal. To know that when you're standing at one part in the earth, if you were to fast forward 1,000 years, it's not going to look the same. And that's okay, because change is life. Life is change. As Grace Slick would say, how it differs from the rocks, for those who know what I'm talking about. And it's just, I really think that connection with our natural surroundings is crucial. I like to call myself an herbalist in ways. I don't know all of the herbs, but I definitely love medicinal plants, and I've done my share of research on them and found out how little we really know about our connections to the natural world. How these, polysaccharides and these different terpenes work with other components of our food and our medicine to affect our own health, and how our mentality plays a role in that, and how important placebo is, which placebo is just our ability to believe something works, so it does. And this is why I think this is exactly what happens in nature, with an added boost of being in a place that is so awe-inspiring because everything is always new and fresh, that it's hard for us to really feel that important in a situation like that, but also it's hard for us not to feel important. We realize our significance, that we are all part of this puzzle. And everybody knows, when you put a puzzle together, if it's missing one piece, it's just not the same. You're a piece. So make peace with your piece. Peace.